Hey there, it's Mr. Ori again with your one cool thing video for the day. Today the topic is Minute of Mindfulness. So I want to just preface this and say I'm not an expert in mindfulness at all. In fact, when I first was exposed to mindfulness, I was really uncomfortable with it, really didn't like it. But it's one of those things where it kind of kept coming up again and again, and eventually I was kind of like, okay, maybe I ought to give this a try. Maybe I ought to see what this is all about. And really one of the turning points for me was seeing a 60 Minutes news story with Anderson Cooper, which I'll link to at the end of this presentation, that really gave a nice overview of the science behind mindfulness and the practice of it, and just gave a really nice overview, and it kind of helped open my mind to it. It ended up being a video that I showed to students. And so I just want to kind of show you just a couple ways that you can implement mindfulness without being super deep diving into the topic of mindfulness, and just maybe it'll add a little something to your class. We have the strategic goal of wellness, balance, and belonging, and I think mindfulness and mindfulness-based practices really fit in with that. So I think there's this perception of mindfulness that it's kids sitting on the floor meditating, or that it's super hippy-dippy or touchy-feely. From my personal experience, I think mindfulness is really just a pause and a transition. A really good way that it was described to me is thinking about, if you're going to go wine tasting or food tasting, what do you do between tastings? Well, you typically take a drink of water, or you have something kind of bland to cleanse the palate. Mindfulness can be just this pause and transition that really helps cleanse the mental palate. We expect kids to go from one subject right into the next subject, and that can be a really hard transition. Or maybe they're coming from lunchtime with stuff that's going on in their personal lives, or rushing to get back to school from being off campus and getting lunch, and then all of a sudden they show up to class and we expect them to do some really heavy lifting, mentally speaking. And so giving them just a minute, or even not even a minute, to help with that transition can really help them be more focused and more attentive in your class. It really is a moment for them to be present and kind of settle into what you're about to do. And again, it's totally okay to not be an expert or even know what you're doing. When I first started doing this, I was very, very transparent with my students. Hey, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know all things mindfulness. Just try these things for me. I think you're going to like it. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I showed that video, and I think that really helped them kind of get a big picture view of it. So why mindfulness? I don't want to get into a ton of the research of it, but it's pretty well established that mindfulness or meditation has all kinds of benefits for both kids and adults, from things like reducing stress and increasing focus, helping with self-control regulation. It can actually boost memory and empathy. It really kind of depends what the focus of the practice is, but generally it does really help increase focus and reduce stress. It's really significant. So I want to talk a little bit about some variations of what you could do. So I got a little chime, kind of the classic chime. I think you could even use a chime. You probably find one on YouTube, a generic one. And the first time I introduced it, kind of the start of the year, I just told the students I was going to ring the bell, and I wanted them just to close their eyes and listen to the bell, and try to listen as it faded, and when they could no longer hear the sound of the bell, they would just put their thumb on the table, and then they could open their eyes. And it really only lasted, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 seconds, but there was something about that chime, something about that focus that helps students kind of settle in, okay? Kind of a next step or another variation of that is to maybe have students close their eyes. You can ring a chime or not. Just tell them to take 5 slow, purposeful breaths. And you could guide them to even, make that a 4-count breath in, pause, and then a 4-count breath out. Or maybe 4-second breathing in, 4-second hold, and then 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. And have them just do that 5 times, and then open their eyes and begin what you're going to do. So maybe you start with the chime, and then you work up to that golden moment, and then maybe you give them a minute. Maybe once they start to get a little comfortable with it, you could say, I'm going to, just give them a minute One idea is to kind of guide them to count their breaths. And one of the things that's really true about mindfulness that I used to get caught up on is I thought I was doing it wrong, and I thought my mind wandering was a bad thing. But that's actually good. That's normal. That's the nature of the mind. And so you can tell them that their mind will wander, and when it wanders, to just bring their attention back to their breath without judgment, right? And so you can have them say count their breaths at a nice, steady, comfortable pace. And when they lose focus and their mind wanders, just tell them it's okay. Come back to that breath and restart their counting and see how high they can count in that minute. Once maybe you get a little more comfortable with it, there's the idea of a body scan. This can be a couple minutes long where you kind of progressively have them focus on different parts of their body and relaxing different parts of their body. If you Google body scan mindfulness, you could probably even find a script that will kind of walk you through how to do that. So there's tons of resources out there. Check out mindfulschools.org. I think they're a really great resource, and they have trainings for helping teachers implement mindfulness themselves or in their classes. The YouTube video, if you just Google search or YouTube search 60 minutes mindfulness, you'll get this video here, and just look it up. There's so many great resources out there, kind of too many to list. But hopefully that just kind of gives you an idea. I'd really encourage you just to try that chime and listen to that, or the 5 breaths. Just help students make that transition. Doesn't even have to be at the beginning of class. Maybe you've been doing something really complicated throughout class and you need a break before you go on to the next thing. Just giving kids that, again, mental palate cleansing to help them refocus, be present, and be ready for the next thing. So I hope that's one cool thing that maybe you could try. If you've got other ideas for videos related to this, I'd encourage you to make your own, or you could comment in the comments below, hey, I'd really like to see a video on this. Can you go into a little more detail or help me find resources? I'd love to hear those. Let's grow our personal learning network. All right, thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.